Once upon a time, in a charming village situated on the edge of a magical forest, there lived a girl named Little Red Riding Hood. She got this affectionate nickname because of the red hood that her grandmother lovingly sewed for her. The village was known for its picturesque houses with thatched roofs, flower gardens, and an atmosphere of eternal spring. Little Red Riding Hood, with her adventurous spirit, loved exploring her surroundings, especially the mysterious forest that whispered ancient secrets. Every corner of this forest hid magical creatures, bright plants and paths that seemed to change place every day. The girl was known to everyone in the village, not only for her red hood, but also for her kindness and insatiable curiosity. She often helped her neighbors and told wonderful stories that she had heard from her grandmother, a wise lady who knew many of the mysteries of the forest. Little Red Riding Hood felt a special connection to the nature around her, and her eyes lit up with excitement whenever she ventured into new discoveries. One sunny morning, Little Red Riding Hood went to visit her grandmother, who lived on the other side of the forest. With a basket full of sweet breads and homemade jams, she left the house, kissing her mother goodbye. The forest was alive with birdsong and leaves rustling. The scent of wild flowers mixed with the fresh scent of the earth, creating a magical atmosphere around her. As she walked along the winding trail, Little Red Riding Hood admired the colorful butterflies that danced in the air and the rays of sunlight that penetrated the treetops, creating a spectacle of light and shadow on the forest floor. Every now and then, she stopped to pick some flowers and observe the small animals that peeked curiously through the bushes. Each step took her deeper into the forest, where the magic seemed more intense and the secrets deeper. She felt a mixture of excitement and tranquility, as if the forest was welcoming her into its green arms. The journey was as enchanting as the destination, and Little Red Riding Hood enjoyed every moment, knowing that she would soon be in her grandmother's loving arms, sharing laughter and stories by the fire. While walking, Little Red Riding Hood encountered a cunning wolf, but she was unaware of his treacherous plans. He, disguising his malicious intent, asked her where she was going. Naively, Little Red replied, "I'm going to visit my grandmother who is sick." The wolf, his eyes bright with cunning, smiled amiably and said, "What a lovely girl you are, bringing treats to your grandmother. Where does she live?" Little Red, without suspecting anything, pointed in the direction of her grandmother's house, describing the path in detail. The wolf, maintaining a worried facade, suggested, "Why don't you take that path over there? It's a little longer, but there are prettier flowers to pick for your grandmother." The girl, delighted with the idea, thanked the wolf and followed the new route, not realizing that the wolf was already plotting his sinister plan. He hurried along the shortest path, determined to get to his grandmother's house before Little Red. While Little Red Riding Hood walked distractedly, admiring the flowers and listening to the birdsong, the wolf advanced quickly and stealthily, barely containing his eagerness to put his treacherous plan into practice. He could already imagine his grandmother's surprise when she opened the door and found him, and the fear she intended to spread in the sweet girl when she arrived. The wolf then suggested that she pick some flowers to cheer up her grandmother. Little Riding Hood thought the idea was wonderful and diverted his path, going deeper into the forest. Eyes shining with excitement, she bent down to pick the most vibrant and fragrant flowers she could find, imagining her grandmother's joy upon receiving them. The forest seemed more magical than ever, with rays of sunlight dancing through the leaves and the sound of streams in the distance creating a peaceful symphony. Meanwhile, the wolf, taking advantage of the girl's distraction, ran quickly to her grandmother's house. He moved nimbly among the trees, his thoughts filled with evil plans. Upon arriving at his grandmother's house, the wolf knocked softly on the door. The grandmother, frail and sick, asked who it was, and the wolf, imitating Little Red Riding Hood's sweet voice, replied, "It's me, Grandma Little Red Riding Hood, bringing sweet breads and homemade jams." The grandmother, without suspecting anything, asked her granddaughter to come in. As soon as the door opened, the wolf rushed forward, capturing the grandmother before she could scream for help. He locked her in the closet, planning his next move. Dressed in his grandmother's clothes and lying on the bed, the wolf patiently awaited Little Red Riding Hood's arrival, with a cunning and predatory smile on his face. He was determined to complete his plan, while the forest continued to enchant and distract the girl, who, without rushing, got closer and closer to her grandmother's house. Arriving there, the wolf knocked on the door and, imitating Little Red Riding Hood's voice, asked to enter. The grandmother, realizing the danger, hid in the closet, but the wolf was quick and locked her in the attic. He disguised himself with her clothes and lay down on the bed, awaiting the girl's arrival. He adjusted his grandmother's scarf and glasses, trying to look as much like the lady as possible. With a mischievous smile, he imagined Little Red Riding Hood's surprise and terror at seeing him. Meanwhile, Little Red Riding Hood continued her walk, her basket now full of flowers next to the bread and jam. She felt a sense of calm as she walked along the trail, unaware of the danger that awaited her. When he arrived at his grandmother's house, he noticed that the door was ajar, which he thought was strange, but he didn't suspect anything. She knocked lightly and entered, calling for her grandmother. "Grandma, I'm here. I brought sweet breads and homemade jams for you." Upon hearing his granddaughter's voice, the wolf, disguised in bed, responded in a soft tone, "Come in, my dear, I'm in the room." Little Red Riding Hood followed the voice and upon entering the room, found her grandmother lying on the bed, covered up to her chin. "Grandma, how different you are today!" exclaimed the girl, approaching the bed. "What big eyes you have!" "There to see you better, my dear," replied the wolf, trying to hide his hoarse voice. "And what big ears you have!" continued Little Red Riding Hood, now closer. "They are to hear you better," replied the wolf. "But, Grandma, what big teeth you have," said the girl, scared. "They're to eat you better," roared the wolf, leaping from the bed and revealing his true identity. Little Red Riding Hood screamed and tried to run away, but the wolf blocked the door, its intentions now clearly threatening. Shortly afterwards, Little Red arrived with her basket and entered the house. When he saw his grandmother in bed, he noticed something strange. "Grandma, what big eyes you have!" he exclaimed. "They are to see you better, my dear," replied the wolf in a hoarse voice. Little Red Riding Hood, still intrigued, continued to observe the figure on the bed. "And what big ears you have, Grandma," she said, taking a step closer. "They are to hear you better, my dear," said the wolf, trying hard to maintain his disguise. The girl, still unaware of the imminent danger, frowned and said, "But Grandma, what a big nose you have!" "The nose is to smell you better, my dear," replied the wolf, trying to suppress his impatience. Little Red Riding Hood, now very close to the bed, noticed something even more alarming. "But Grandma, what big teeth you have!" she exclaimed, feeling a chill run up her spine. "They're to eat you better," roared the wolf, leaping from the bed with claws outstretched. Little Red Riding Hood let out a scream and tried to run, but the wolf was faster, blocking her path with a menacing smile. The girl, shaking with fear, finally realized how dangerous the situation was. At that exact moment, a hunter passing through the forest heard Little Red Riding Hood's screams. Knowing his grandmother's house well, he ran toward the desperate sound, his gun ready. When he reached the door, he saw the wolf about to attack the girl. With a quick movement, the hunter entered the house and confronted the wolf. There was an intense fight, but the hunter, with his skill and courage, managed to defeat the wolf and free Little Red Riding Hood. Little Red Riding Hood, still shaking, ran to the hunter and hugged him, thanking him for his courage. Together, they went up to the attic and rescued the grandmother, who was scared but relieved. The grandmother thanked the hunter and hugged Little Red Riding Hood, promising herself never to let the girl go out alone in the forest again. From that day on, Little Red Riding Hood learned to be more cautious and never talk to strangers. And the forest, although still magical and full of secrets, held for her the memory of a dangerous encounter that she would never forget. "Grandma, what big ears you have!" Little Red continued, feeling a chill down her spine. "They ought to hear you better, my granddaughter," said the wolf, smiling frighteningly. Little Red Riding Hood, increasingly suspicious, took another step towards the bed. "But Grandma, what big eyes you have!" "They're to see you better, darling," replied the wolf, trying to keep his voice soft as his eyes sparkled with mischief. The girl, now very close, noticed something even stranger. "Grandma, what big teeth you have! They're to eat you better," roared the wolf, jumping out of bed with claws bared. Little Red Riding Hood screamed, trying to retreat, but the wolf was about to attack her. At the last moment, she managed to grab a stool and throw it towards the wolf, who was hit and hesitated for a second. That second was enough for Little Red Riding Hood to run to the door, but the wolf was on her heels again. Desperate, she started screaming for help. Fortunately, a hunter passing through the forest heard her anguished screams. He ran towards his grandmother's house, and when he arrived, he saw the wolf about to capture Little Red Riding Hood. With a quick movement, the hunter raised his weapon and faced the wolf, who was now roaring in fury. There was a fierce fight, but the hunter, with his dexterity and courage, managed to overpower the wolf. Little Red Riding Hood, still shaking with fear, watched as the hunter finally immobilized the creature. After ensuring that the wolf was no longer a danger, the hunter and Little Red Riding Hood freed the grandmother from the attic. The grandmother, relieved and grateful, hugged her granddaughter and the brave hunter. "I will never open the door again without being sure who is on the other side," promised the grandmother, while Little Red Riding Hood swore to be more careful in her future adventures. The three returned to the village, where everyone was relieved to see Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother safe and sound. The story of the encounter with the wolf spread quickly, and the girl became an example of courage and prudence. From that day on, Little Red Riding Hood always remembered her mother's words. "Don't talk to strangers and stay on the safe path." And the forest, although still enchanting, would never be seen with the same innocent eyes again. "Grandma, what big teeth you have!" she shouted, already suspicious. "They're to eat you better." And with a jump, the wolf revealed itself, ready to attack. Little Red Riding Hood screamed, instinctively backing away, but the wolf was quick and agile. Just when it seemed like there was no hope, a crash sounded through the house. The door was opened with force, and the hunter, who had heard the girl's screams, ran in. The wolf, now cornered, tried to escape, but the hunter was fearless and experienced. With a precise movement, he immobilized the wolf, which was struggling fiercely but was unable to escape. Little Red Riding Hood, still shaking with fear, watched everything with wide eyes. After an intense struggle, the hunter finally overpowered the wolf, tying him tightly. He turned to Little Red Riding Hood, who was paralyzed with shock, and comforted her. "Are you well?" he asked, worried. The girl, still in shock, could only nod her head. Then the two went to the attic and freed the grandmother, who was shaking but unharmed. With tears in her eyes, the grandmother hugged Little Red Riding Hood and thanked the hunter for his bravery. "I never thought something like this could happen," said the grandmother, still catching her breath.